Thanks for listening to the Granite List Live. Today's episode is brought to you by Connect Healthcare Collaboration, where benefits marketing meets clinical advocacy to drive effective employee engagement.
Welcome to another episode of the Granite List Live, where we discuss all things related to employee benefits and human capital. I'm Lee Dill, and today we're talking about pets. Pets are reshaping the concept of family, whether they're a starter children or the substitute for those who decide not to have children at all. The pet is at the center of the American home and a trend that's here to stay. Pets have officially graduated to the status of full-fledged family members with budgets to match. And someone with a sick pet at home can often mean a distracted, anxious, and disengaged employee. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Aaron Oates, CEO of United Pet Care, and we're going to explore how forward-thinking brokers can leverage pet benefits into more engaged employees and happier, stickier clients. Aaron, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, Lee. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so let's just jump right on into it. Tell me, how did you get into selling pet insurance?
Absolutely. So maybe just a quick adjustment. We are not actually an insurance product. We're insurance-like, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But into the pet benefit space, I've told many people this. I feel like every time I've made a 5-year plan, I've been wrong about it. Certainly no point in my 5-year plan did I think pet was probably in the window for me. But I started in what I now lovingly call non-pet healthcare. So I was on the human healthcare side and working for a radiation oncology company, actually. And my first exposure to veterinary medicine was we went from selling about 2% of our equipment within a couple of years to selling 8 to 10% of our equipment into the veterinary space. And it's the same pieces of, multi-million-dollar capital equipment that we're treating horses and dogs and cats as compared to people. About that same time, I met my now wife, and I think on our second or third date, she informed me that we would be rescuing a puppy and that I could deal with it, get on board or get off the train. And I had never grown up with animals. I'd always liked dogs, but over time and pretty quickly, I went from kind of a very finance guy mentality of we have this much money to care for the pet over its life to now, if that little guy needed a kidney, I would be up on the operating table. And so there's kind of personal and professional lives merging over time. And very long story short, my wife and I both had a little bit of a COVID professional reset, as did many people. And one of the things that we noticed, we had adopted a second dog that we called our pandemic puppy. And almost everybody that we knew had done the same thing. Without getting too much into the detail, both of our dogs were really critical components of our mental health, our happiness, our dynamic as a couple during some, pretty challenging times. And we came to the collective realization that this was a place where we both were passionate and where we saw tremendous opportunity. From there, I was very fortunate. Well, my wife and I bought a pet store together, and she fired me about 3 months in. I had been sufficiently helpful. She said, you need to go find something else to do. But I had kind of been bit by the bug within the pet space, and I was very fortunate to be connected to United Pet Care as they were going through an ownership transition. United Pet Care has been around for almost 30 years. It was founded by a visionary woman who was actually 60 when she started the company with her 2 daughters. And they had gotten it to a place where they were looking for somebody to kind of usher it into its next phase of growth. And that was about 4.5 years ago. And we just haven't looked back since. It's really been an incredible ride.
Yeah. So, okay, you talked about your COVID pup, and I'm sure there's millions of listeners, people out there that also have a 5-year-old fur baby of some sort. How has really pet ownership changed over the past year? Why are benefits so important for these pets?
Yeah, you mentioned it a bit in the description. I think COVID was an accelerator for what really had been kind of a multi-generational trend, which is the humanization of pets. My observation coming from the human healthcare world is that healthcare specifically for pets has trailed human healthcare by, 10 to 15 years. So actually things like CBD, which are widely prescribed for humans and have kind of crested, now are actually getting very prevalent in animals. Pets are living longer. So a cat born today will live almost 100% longer than a cat born in 1990, which is incredible.
Wow.
But with that, we also have unfortunately passed on some of our human chronic conditions to our animals. When you live longer, that long tail of life gets longer as well. So we have more pets that have chronic heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, all of these things that we see in human beings as we've started to live longer and longer as well. But really the trend that COVID accelerated was, a couple generations ago, the pet was a piece of property that lived in the backyard. And, then they kind of made their way into the house, as they do. And from there, of course, it's a short trip to sleeping in the bed. And now, really into the stroller or the bassinet for a lot of families as well, where they really are truly fur babies. And I think COVID really just accelerated that trend. So now, one of my favorite statistics from a benefits perspective is that actually not only do more millennials and Gen Z have pets than have children, but actually more millennials and Gen Z employees and employees writ large have pet care related bills than have vision care related bills. And obviously vision insurance or vision discount plan, which is actually closer to what we resemble, is considered a staple of the voluntary benefits package. I firmly believe that we're only a couple years away from pet being seen as that same kind of standard.
Interesting. And you touched on this a little bit about, COVID was a time that more pets were coming into the household, and now people are going back to work. And so what trends are you seeing in HR that manifest into the pet space?
Yeah, there's been a whole cycle that has kind of happened within a short span of a couple of years. So when COVID hit, all the shelters emptied out. It was actually amazing for rescue pets in particular. 23 million pets were brought into American homes, many of those by first-time pet owners. And the stark realization, and one that is kind of happening over the course of the last few years, is they're really expensive, especially if you're kind of taking care of them right, which obviously most people intend to do. I think the other realization is people were staying and working from home. They had that constant companion. And in that return to office mandate has been really difficult, not just for the pets being left at home, who probably for their entire lives have had somebody there 24/7, but also for the people to leave their pets at home. And I think a couple of the trends specific to benefits is now employees are actually making or assessing jobs in the framework of how can I care for my animal? Which again, if you think about it through the lens of my pet is a fur baby, it's not that surprising. You're making decisions based on your ability to care for your children, a top priority. And many, especially younger employees, are thinking about pets in the same way. So that can be everything from pet-friendly workplaces to flexible working arrangements. And then again, specifically for younger employees, some sort of financial benefit that will allow me to take the best care of my pet possible. That's actually going to be more relevant to me than potentially the vast majority of other ancillary benefits.
So tell me a little bit more about the benefits that you offer as part of the voluntary package.
Absolutely. So I'm a big believer. We're a relatively small company and just kind of being the best in the world at what you do. I mentioned it a little earlier, we are not a traditional insurance plan. So we're kind of like an HMO or a direct primary care for fur babies. So it's a pretty innovative model within the veterinary space, obviously a very well-known one within human healthcare. But effectively what we offer is a network-based pet healthcare membership plan. And effectively, we go negotiate rates with veterinary providers. That's a percentage savings off of their usual and customary fees. And that allows us to offer a product that is agnostic of age, pre-existing conditions, breed-specific conditions, or utilization. We're basically just making the relationship between the vet and the pet parent. That's important for a couple of reasons. One, as many pet parents are unfortunately finding, they're not candidates for traditional pet insurance. 95% of pets are considered to be a family member. Only 4% of pets are currently insured. And anybody that's posted one picture of their pet to social media and gotten the deluge of paid advertising after that knows it's not because people aren't aware of pet insurance. It's just because once you start to chip away at, you can't afford the monthly premium, your dog is too old. French bulldogs, God love them, they've kind of been inbred into a place where they're uninsurable on a number of conditions, respiratory, hip, allergies. You can get a policy, but it's not going to cover any of those things because they're considered breed-specific conditions. And guess what? That's where the vast majority of your medical spend is going to go. So by the time you kind of chip all of those away, you're left with a pretty big gap in the marketplace between people that are looking for some sort of option and what's available on the market. And we're really there to plug that gap. From a group perspective, which is obviously of great interest to your audience, the strategy or the plan design allows us to offer a true group product. So one of the things that we are fully aware of, brokers have pulled in a million different directions. After COVID in particular, there have been this proliferation of voluntary benefits, and very much realize that for brokers and for HR, there's just death by 1,000 paper cuts of drags on their time, HR attention, employee attention. And our goal is to be as easy to do business with as possible for brokers and for HR. And for us, that means a true group product that can integrate directly within the benefit administration system so that there's no setup fee and no ongoing burden to administer the program, and basically not punishing HR and the broker for offering a new benefit to their employees.
Right. So it's a no-brainer. It's no cost for the employer. It's easy to set up. And then you're offering a benefit that the employees find so valuable and is cheaper than an insurance plan. And we'll cover are we talking about hamsters and fish and alligators, or just cats, dogs?
Yeah.
Tell me what kind of animals.
It's a great question. We'll probably have to carve alligators out of that. I'm not sure of the legality. We do cover all animals that are seen by our network of veterinarians. And so I will say that is typically companion animal. We do have several large animal practices, but most of our practices are companion animal. You're in a little bit of a different beast, pardon the bad pun, in the large animal, equine and bovine vets. But typically we do cover any of those animals. And so we have ferrets on the plan. We have tortoises. Fun fact about tortoises, you actually have to create a will and a succession plan when you get a tortoise, because the tortoise is going to outlive you.
What?
And so there's all kinds of planning that has to take place there. And we do have avians, pocket pets, kind of the wide range. The vast majority of our insured population, of course, are dog and cats, which is reflective of pet ownership. But we do cover all kind of furry friends.
That's great. Can you go into a little bit of the financials of how much it might cost and how much my savings would be as a utilizer?
Absolutely. So we are laser focused on employers as a distribution channel. We do offer a direct-to-consumer rate, but the rates offered to our employers are actually about a 40% discount. And we discount even further if an employer chooses to subsidize the program, which even to my surprise, a growing number of employers are choosing to do. So by virtue of being an employee at the Granite List, you get access to a proprietary rate. That rate is less than $20 per pet per month. And we do have a multi-pet discount of $1 per pet for each pet onward. Now, the nice thing about that pricing is that you don't have to qualify, so there's no questionnaire to fill out, and every pet pays the exact same rate. We have brand new puppies, and we have, I think at last count, we have a 21-year-old cat, which is our oldest animal on the plan, and they pay the exact same rate. So from there, you start paying into the membership fee, going through open enrollment or when you start. We then have you pick a primary care vet within our network of about 1,500 veterinarians nationwide. And so once that happens, you immediately become eligible, no waiting periods or anything like that, to save on a certain percentage of all in-house services that the vet offers. So a couple of important caveats there. We do have some emergency vets on the program. Usually that savings is less. It's 10 to 15%. For other emergencies, we also have a 24/7 vet helpline, but mostly our vet network are general practice and then some select specialties. The way that our network works is that you can pull up the vets in your area. Obviously, you can solve for how far of a driving distance it would be, but then you can also see the percentage savings off of every service that the vet offers. So the thing that we pride ourselves on is perfect transparency and a program that's really easy to understand. The other nice thing from a consumer experience is you save that money at the time of service. So almost all pet insurance is a reimbursement model. So you have to pay the whole thing up front, submit the claim, which is actually when the first underwriting happens. And a lot of people don't know that. So your pet may get underwritten and denied after you've been paying in as a pet insurance customer. We have no underwriting and no process for claim form submission. So basically you just go in. I'll use a recent example. I have a middle-aged terrier. We had to have about 5 or 6 teeth removed. And that was, about a $1,200 procedure all in. United Pet Care saved me about $500, which on a $200 a year membership is obviously about a 2.5x ROI for a vet visit that, quite frankly, is going to happen probably about every year or every other year for me, in addition to the routine care that my pet is going to require.
Well, that sounds great. And I'm going to hone in on one thing that I heard you say, which was 24/7 pet telehealth.
Mm-hmm.
How many times at 9:00 at night has my dog gotten a hold of the brownies that the 10-year-old decided to make and left all over the place? And oh my gosh, there's a stomach flipping. What's going on? Let's text. Good thing we have a really good friend that's a vet, but Not that many people have that opportunity. Tell me, how does that work? That's a great, huge resource.
So, Lee, that's actually the scenario that I usually use as illustrative because it happens incredibly often. I always call it the Halloween candy question. How many bite-sized Snickers bars that your chocolate lab ate before you need to be really worried?
Mm-hmm.
There's a separate subset of that where the dog eats the brownies, the special brownies that mom and dad prepared, and then you have to be worried for a different reason about that. It happens all the time. So we have a great provider, 99% customer satisfaction rate, about a 30-second answer time, and you're guaranteed to talk to a veterinary professional. It sounds like you may have some exposure to this, but going into an emergency vet after hours, which is your only option at 9 o'clock, going to be $500 minimum, basically just to be seen and assessed. So the thing that I'm most proud of is that 75% of our calls or chats into our service result in not requiring some sort of emergency vet visit. So it's a huge cost savings avoided. Rather than using Dr. Google, which everybody knows the problems with that, you can actually talk to a veterinary professional, understand your options, and know, hey, is this something that I can wait to book an appointment with my vet, or that I need to just observe and don't need to worry about at all? Or is it a true emergency that, I need to act on right now?
Well, that's a huge upside, as well as your benefits. So let's bring this back to the employer space. This sounds like a great opportunity, a great benefit for so many employees. Let's go back a little bit more to what does implementation look like?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, it is our goal to be as easy to do business with as possible and easy to implement as possible. Understanding where we sit in the priority stack for brokers and for HR, as important as obviously we believe and know our benefit to be. And so for us, really we push as hard as we can to leverage the benefit administration system as source of truth. We have connected with every major Ben admin system. We have out-of-the-box connectivity with systems like iSolved, ADP, Ease, Employee Navigator, which obviously represent in the small group space a pretty significant opportunity because a lot of times you can't get a quote for pet insurance on a group under 100 lives. So from an implementation standpoint, we send guides. We have an implementation team that works directly with the EDI rep. In less than 1% of cases, there's some sort of fee associated. I think the Ben admin platforms are learning that they can't nickel and dime people anymore, that connectivity is kind of becoming table stakes. But in those instances, we oftentimes will offer to subsidize, or we can usually negotiate to get the fee down. And the reason that we're able to do that is because it is such a straightforward product design and we require so little information. So we actually don't even take any information about the pet at time of enrollment. That happens post because it has no bearing on the rate. So you can sign up for the membership and we can accept you without knowing anything about the animal. And so effectively we build out so that enrollment can go into the Ben admin system. It's a very straightforward rate table of the number of pets that you want to enroll and the total fee that will be deducted from the paycheck. And then from there, where we can, sign up for automated EDI file feed so that it just happens on autopilot in the background. Broker and HR don't have to worry about it. We invoice based off of the Ben admin readout, so that remains source of truth. And we have obviously reporting that we send to HR and to the brokers so that they can understand participation rates when people are adding and dropping. We don't require a life event, and so employees do have the ability, if the company so chooses, to enroll year round. And again, we just direct everybody to go to the Ben admin system with changes so that HR doesn't need to be involved.
Sounds so easy.
I know, that's the goal.
Yes. Okay, so Aaron, you've been involved in the past 5.5 years in the pet space. You came from employee benefits and it sounds like selling into the pet space, and now you've got pet benefits. You've been on the cusp of this change and how pets have taken over our lives, basically. What do you see? What's going to happen in the next 5 years in this space?
It's a great question. And I tell you, I feel like I've a little bit been the guy wearing the tinfoil hat at veterinary conferences for the last 4 or 5 years, because for better or for worse, because as we know, there are certain things that are not the best about our current healthcare system, but pet healthcare is going to look a lot more like human healthcare. We already have consolidation, and so the number of owners of practices are getting more and more concentrated. That unfortunately has come with some price increases, as it often does, and the need for a true cost containment solution is very imminent. I'll use California as an example because even above and beyond its population, it has a disproportionate number of pets and insured pets. It's about 1 in 5 pets insured in the United States are insured in California. And the 3 largest providers, I won't name names, but they all in the last 12 months have requested and received north of 40% year-over-year premium increases.
Wow.
And that's not because they're profit taking or anything like that. It's quite frankly because they've been losing a significant amount because of the underlying inflation in veterinary costs, which has outpaced core inflation, which we all know is a problem, by about 3 times. So, my view is actually the industry is kind of at a crossroads where we're now pricing out the vast majority of consumers, if they haven't already, while there's still no profitability. And I think there's just kind of a collective reckoning that's happening that if these pets are truly the family members that we believe them to be, that there needs to be a rethinking about how we take care of them, how we budget for them, and basically just how they kind of get integrated into our daily financial planning. I do think it's a very exciting time to be in the space. I think that there's nothing changing about the trends, underlying trends, and those 23 million fur babies are certainly here to stay. I think the next step is everybody's starting to become more of an educated consumer with respect to pet insurance. And our view, obviously, is that the employer is probably the best channel for pet benefits in general because of that trusted relationship between the employer and the employee. So where I think the puck is going, I think you're going to see some sort of pet benefit. Obviously, I'm biased towards ours, but some sort of pet benefit, maybe even multiple options. We're very complementary to insurance, and about 20% of our employers offer both products. We love that when we see it. So I think that will really become table stakes from an employee attraction and retention perspective. And I do think you'll start to see consumers that are much more activated and much more educated as either employees or just consumers in general.
Yeah, so interesting. It'll be fun to watch along and see what happens. So if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you, Aaron, I'm going to call you the veterinary tin man now. I love that. Or also known as the CEO of United Pet Care. Where do I need to direct them to?
Yeah, anybody that's interested, probably the fastest response would be sales@unitedpetcare.com. But my email is aoaks, OAKS, @unitedpetcare.com. We're on LinkedIn, company website. We have a contact form. If you use Ease or Navigator, we're in the marketplace. And so there's a very easy contact form there. So we try to make ourselves easy to find for brokers and employer partners. But that would probably be the most direct way.
Okay, well, great. Well, Aaron, thank you again for joining me on another episode of the Granite List Live.
Thanks for having me, Lee. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Granite List Live. Access our entire library by visiting your favorite podcast venue or subscribe on our site, thegranitelist.live.